Luke, thank you very much for helping with the PowerPoints and stuff. Are you happy to throw up that first page and we'll just say where we're at and recap very briefly? That would be great. Grand. This is the basic structure of what we're doing, and this is the last of the 3 sessions. But as we were just saying there in the chat, that who we are for the Lord matters more than anything else. Your characters matter more than anything else. And so you'd be aware probably of various scandals and things that happen on Twitter around the world in terms of Christian leadership, in terms of pastors or ministry leaders. And it's not so much stuff to do. The mental thing is who you are. Leader, you've got 3 broad brush things to do. One is target, where are we going? Team, how are we going to get there? And task, what do I do today? So we were looking last time at target because these are kind of in order. The most important one is where am I headed? And look more briefly at who am I leading and where are we going? So Luke, you're going to give us the next slide. This is again just a recap of character of the story so far. That who you are matters more than what you do, and that God has no employees, the Father only has children. And that diagram at the bottom, you might remember, was that what matters is character over and above competence or self-confidence. So that the pyramid on the left is inherently unstable, and the one on the right is the one that matters. And if you want to give us the next slide again. What we're looking at was target. That is where we're heading for. So the next point, what you need to do is your people need to know why we exist. Tell me why. And a vision will grab their hearts, unify a group of disparate people with different backgrounds, different personalities, and energize them for something. And the next bullet point is that vision leaks. It always leaks away week by week and across the course of a semester. That I forget what I'm about. And so your key role as a leader is to keep communicating the vision, to illustrate it, to breathe it, to say it, to tell it, to show stories about it. And sometimes you get sick of it. And we talked last time about how not to make it boring, but you have to keep communicating it, that we have a vision to give every student in Trinity, to give every student in Court, to give every student across the whole of Ireland an opportunity to hear and respond to the gospel. It is the same vision for staff, for me, for students, and for our supporters. There are hundreds or there are thousands of supporters praying for you, supporting financially as well, with the same singular vision to give every student in Ireland an opportunity to hear and respond to the gospel. But it leaks away, and so you have to find ways to keep telling it. Okay, so that's just recap of the last 2 kind of sessions. That so far so good? Grand. So the next slide, we're looking at team. And the question is, how are we going to get there? If we have a vision for what we want to do, how do we get there? And the first point is what is so great about teams? Because you would know that quite often you could get on with the job quite easily yourself, and it's quite a hassle to have to work with other people. So what is so great about teams? Well, the first is that being a Christian is a team game. That is, you are never, ever called just to be me and Jesus. You're called into a community of people together, and being a Christian is a team game. And in the Bible, leadership is always plural. So I think we looked at this the first time, that in 1 Peter 5, Peter says to the elders, plural, among you. Paul in Titus tells Titus to appoint elders, plural. The word elders is always plural. And in the Christian life, there are no such things as lone rangers. You've only got, as far as I can see, apart from Jesus, in the New Testament, you've only got 2 lone rangers in Acts. You've got Philip with the Ethiopian, and you've got Paul in Athens waiting for his friends to join him. But always being a Christian is being part of a community. And so Christian unions are missional communities on campus. And leadership is plural in the Bible. So I'm talking primarily about Christian leadership. There are ways in which in secular leadership you can be an individual, but actually in Christian leadership it is always plural. Teams are vital. The second is that Christian leadership, or our unity together, shows the world something about Jesus. Let me just read to you from John 17. Jesus, who's praying for us, he says, I don't just pray for my disciples, but also for those who will believe in me through their word, that is us, that they may all be one, just as you, Father, are in me and I in you, that they also may be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. And if you have a look in John 17 or other places, you'll see there's an astounding level of unity that Jesus is expecting. It's the same unity that there are between the Father and the Son. And there's a reason, so that, there's a therefore, so that the world may believe that you've sent me. That is, the way that we lead together, the way that you treat each other as a committee or as a small group of leaders matters. It says something about Jesus and about the Trinity. There's something of the aroma of Christ in the way that we work together. And then, of course, when a team works well together, it really does produce, it is more effective, it's more productive, it's more creative. And that's just true for any team working together. That's not just talking about Christian leadership, but it's true that when you're working together with others, perhaps a project as part of your degree or whatever else, you can produce something better. Now, there's the old joke that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. In other words, I'm not saying that every committee or every team also always produces something good, but in a good team, I bring my ideas, someone else brings their ideas, together we sharpen, we come up with something better. Teams have fantastic ability to produce something really good. And the last point here about what is so great about teams is that it protects you from yourself, and actually it protects others from you as well. Let me try and unpack that. There is a danger, and you would see this in secular companies, and you would see it sometimes, sadly, in Christian ministries as well, that the leader gets exalted to a position where they have no accountability to anybody else. And that's really dangerous, because we know that we're sinful, and the Bible shows that we're sinful, and there are sinful leaders. And when I'm a leader, my sin can come out without checks and balances. And so much of the stuff that goes wrong in church leadership or in Christian ministry leadership is an abuse of power. I've got a power, I've got a position, and no one can contradict me in that. And so many people are burned and hurt by abuses of power by Christian leaders. But Christian leadership that is plural means that I am protected from myself, and others are protected from me as well, because it is so quick to want to love position or to want to love authority. It's a really dangerous thing. Someone once said to me, I think I was at Bible college, and they're talking about mission or ministry, that people will love to put you on a pedestal and you'll love to be there. And that's a very memorable, dangerous thing. And it takes humility genuinely to take on the opinions of others, to be willing to work within a team and to have others challenge you. They're not saying that you're not the leader anymore, but they challenge you, and you are not the only one whose voice always carries. And so there are some great things about teams that are vital, not just the third bullet point, they could be applied to any organization, but especially for Christians. It's absolutely vital that we work in teams together. So the next question, or the question at the top of the next page, we're going to put you into small groups, breakout rooms in a second, just to discuss this question. You've only got about 2 minutes, so take a minute to introduce yourself and say hello to others in the group. But just answer this question. What is the difference between a group and a team? Okay, so you might have, let's say that you're president or vice president of a committee of 9 people, or perhaps your CU in total is only 5 members. What is the difference between a group of individuals or a team? Okay, so you've just got 2 minutes. Luke's going to allocate you, I think, randomly into a couple of breakout rooms. What's the difference in a group and a team? And then we'll come back. Welcome back. Good. That was not very long, but anyone got any thoughts, difference between a group and a team? It's one of these things you kind of know the answer, but you can't actually put it in words. But anyway, anyone want to venture anything?
I guess we kind of thought that it was kind of working towards a goal as a team, compared to a group is kind of more just of a collection of people.
Yeah.
But there's more of a purpose, and you maybe have more roles in a team.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Well, let me give you something. Luke, going to fire that up. Here's some difference between the group, in a sense, is thinking about individual results, and the team is focused on a team result. What are we going for together? So an example of that might be you have a study group. You're studying microbiology, and there's 5 of you who are studying the same thing. And so you get into the same room together so that you're at least disciplined to study between 2 o'clock and 4 o'clock every afternoon. But actually, you all pass or fail by your own results, your own exams. Whereas a football team plays together. The 11 players are playing for we win or we lose as a team. And so that in a group, the focus is really on individual efforts, whereas the team, it's the group's efforts together. And you can apply this obviously within a, let's say you have a committee of 9 or 10 members. The small group, if they're just a group of individuals, then the small group coordinator cares about the small groups, but doesn't really care about the mission of the whole CU. The treasurer cares about balancing the books, but doesn't really care about where we're going. Whereas actually as a team together, you care, yes, you care that small groups are working, but you care most of all that actually the CU overall doing mission. And so in a group, I'm thinking about my contribution to the group, whereas in a team, we're thinking, what's the cooperation together? In a group, I'm thinking about my individual accountability, my individual success, but in a group, we're actually mutually accountable to each other. There's all that kind of interconnectedness. And so in a group, you can get 1 + 1 + 1 + 1 = 1 sometimes, but in a team, you get synergy. That is, 1 + 1 equals the bigger than the sum of its parts. And of course, in a group, if one person fails, then he fails or she fails. So in this group, if you fail your exams, you team, we lose, we lose. We win, we win. We share that together. And so, Luke, you want to put up the next question? I'm going to put you back into groups, into breakout rooms. I don't know if they're groups or teams yet, because I don't know how well you know each other. But you may be in a small CU where you don't really have a committee and it's really you and 3 other people. Or you may be in a very large CU where you have a committee of 9 plus a mission committee plus a freshers committee plus I don't know what committees, okay? So your circumstances will vary. But just for 5 minutes, what would it feel like for your CU committee or the team that you're leading to be a team or a group? What will it feel like? What will the dynamic be like? What would look better? What would look worse? And what would you be aiming for? So just back into the same breakout rooms, you've got 4 or 5 minutes just to say, what would it feel like if my team were a team or if my group were a group? Okay, thank you. Grant, anyone want to share what do you think it would feel like, or what does it feel like depending on what your team or your group is like? Any thoughts on that? I think if you just got a group, sometimes it feels like you're kind of wading through treacle. You're trying to keep everybody's self-interest happy, as opposed to, look, guys, we're in this together. There's not a lot of care for each other or each other's, there's a bit of sniping and he's not pulling as hard as I'm pulling and all that kind of stuff, isn't there? It just is not a great atmosphere. So on to the next page, the team. What are we trying to do? Well, I think, what is your job? Your job as a leader, we've talked about vision. We've talked about that, communicating the vision, but your second job is to develop a team. They don't just happen. So the first is to communicate vision. The second is to develop a team, because it's the team that will get you there. And so you have to keep communicating. In order to form a team, you have to keep communicating your common goal, your vision. We've said this before, vision leaks. Vision leaks away from the CU itself, but it leaks away from my heart. It leaks away from my team. So you have to keep not being boring, not saying the same mantra every time, but it's just, this is what we're about. We're about knows that what they're doing is contributing towards mission on campus. What the secretary knows is they're contributing towards mission on campus. They're not just writing letters. Speakers, they're actually part of something bigger. You probably know this famous story about the man going around the cathedral. This is hundreds of years ago. He finds a stonemason and says, "What are you doing?" And one of them says, "I'm cutting a stone." And the other was, "I'm building a cathedral." They're both doing the same job. It's just a different vision. But you've got to communicate the vision to your own team. You've got to care for individual team members. You're not a pastor. That's not your job. But there's a sense in which you as the leader are looking out for the individuals in your team. And of course, that makes it self-limiting as to how big a team can be. So you think about Jesus. How many did he in those 12? He had 3 that he was particularly close to, James and John and Peter. And humanly speaking, you cannot care for 1,000 people. You cannot care for 100 people. There's a limit. But you look out for and you are invested in the needs of this particular team. And so you care for them. And you look for ways for mutual encouragement. That is, within a team context, it's not just you from the front saying, "Oh, I'm patronizing for a minute, okay? well done, Luke, for doing that. What it is that others in the team, Patrick says, well done, Luke, and Luke gives a wee cheer. You know, there's a mutual upbuilding, because what you're building is an atmosphere where you care for each other. It's not just one to many, it's many to many. It's that kind of networked thing. And therefore, in that, you need to have relational time. You need to have time where you're just a group together as human beings enjoying each other. Now, that's very hard in COVID, I get that, but that relational time matters. It matters that you're doing that. And then the last bullet point is being thankful. You want to be thankful. You want to be thankful personally for how things are going, but you want to be thankful and thank people and thank them, so that they know that they're being recognized, that their contribution matters. You know, because if you take the treasurer, the small group leader, the secretary, some of the roles that they're doing are not the most glamorous. Some of the stuff they're doing is quite detailed. They might think that the evangelism secretary does far much more work than they do, but you have to thank the individuals, because the whole team needs each other. And what you do is you create a culture whereby we value each other, look out for each other, and thank each other. There's probably many more things on how to develop a team, but in terms of if I can do these things, wow, that makes a big difference. How do you actually build a team rather than a group? And if you can do some of these consistently, especially the first one, again, this is what we're about. How do we all help each other to get there? You'll start to build a team rather than just a group. So far, so good. Any thoughts on that? Any comments, questions? All okay. Grand. Well, one last thing, and this is quite detailed or quite specific on teams before we go on to task, is just in terms of leading meetings. And these bullet points all come up as one. In that, part of your role in terms of a team is to manage team life, which is often meetings. I should go back and say, by the way, sometimes if you're, let's say you're the vice president, you might get slagged off by saying, look, someone says, oh, you haven't got a job to do. You know, I'm the treasurer, or I'm the secretary. What's your job? You're just the VP, or you're just the president. But actually, your job is to build a team. It's not actually to do some of the that is a doing job. That's a vital job. It's just not as, sometimes people don't always see what you're doing, but that is the job. But yeah, there's running meetings. So you have to plan, you have to have some kind of agenda, you have to be going somewhere. So many committee meetings fail because they don't know what they're discussing. You have to take a note of the minutes of the decisions, not you personally, but someone within your group has to write down, what have we actually decided? I was in a meeting this afternoon with some church leaders. No one was taking any minutes. We were in the same church meeting a few months ago, and we were trying to go, what did we decide last time? And I'm thinking, I'm taking minutes, at least for me, but no one else was taking minutes. That's not a very satisfying meeting for someone else to be part of. As the leader, as the chair, you need to manage the conversations, the people, and the time. So you would know that there are some people who talk all the time. There are some people you have to draw out. There are some people whose contributions are great, but they won't volunteer them unless you say, Luke, tell me what you think. And you have to manage the time, because there's a danger that discussions will just go on forever and ever into the middle of the night. And you have to decide, you have to actually make decisions. Sometimes, by the way, your decision will be, we're not going to decide on this. Your decision will be, look, we've had this discussion, we're not clear enough yet, we're going to postpone it till next week. But also you have to make sure that decisions happen as the leader. Otherwise, you just go around in circles forever. And if you're not good at that, by the way, then find someone else in the group who is good at defining things. Find someone in the group who is good at summarizing and proposing things. And so you might say, well, Julia, would you propose, we've had this long discussion, what do you think? Do you want to come out with a proposal and we can all vote or we can all discuss it? In other words, if there's someone who's good at summarizing, use them. You don't have to have all the gifts yourself. You just have to make sure this is the fact you as the don't do everything, and your committee doesn't do everything. And when you're asking someone else or another group to do something, it's really helpful to be clear on what their responsibility is. And what I mean by that is, if you ask so-and-so to organize something, you have to put in a sentence or two what it is you're asking them to do and what authority they've got. So you might say, Sean, which last bullet point on that was you need to give away the good stuff. In other words, as a leader, what you're often doing is you're developing other people And so sometimes you give away the stuff that you enjoy doing because you're trying to get them to grow. Now, there are other times where you don't give away stuff because it's too important. But as a leader, quite often, you don't get to do all the juicy stuff. You're actually giving other people a chance to do it so that they will grow. And that's part of delegating and managing other people. So let me pause there or stop there. That's all I'm going to do on teams. There's many more things you could do on teams, but just to say that vision matters. And then secondly, how you develop a team matters. That will be the thing that most changes where the CU is going over the course of the year, because it's the team that lead the CU together in mission. So you might be the president, vice president, part of a committee who are part of the CU, or you might be one leader and part of a smaller CU. But it's the team together that determines whether or not you're heading towards that vision or going off somewhere else. So is that okay? Any thoughts or questions on that, on team? I'm not saying it's easy, but actually you'll get most of your joy as well. So I can think of when I was, this is that nearly 30 years ago now in Glasgow, still think very fondly of the team that we built there and of those who were on the committee with me. I can still remember all their names, which I can't even remember the names of my children, so it's not a bad achievement. Grand. Next slide. Back to the summary slide. Where are we at? What matters is who you are as a leader, character, and we're heading for target, team, and task. And the last one we're going to look at is task. What do we do now? So again, let's have the next slide then. And at the bottom there, you'll see that you are not called to do everything, and that 24 hours were enough for Jesus and for Paul. In other words, Jesus said on the cross, it is finished. Not, oh, if I only had 25 hours in the day, I would have done one more thing. But actually, what he came to do, he finished. And Paul, at the end of his life, says, I've run the race. I've finished the task. I've done it. And 24 hours are enough because there's always more things to do. And you're not called to do everything. You're called primarily to study medicine or to study English, whatever it is that you're studying a degree on. You're not giving up your degree so it's just to do CU stuff. So you're not called to do everything. You have to make decisions, and your CU members have to make decisions. And that's what we're trying to do. What is the best thing I can do, and what can I leave undone? Because it's really, really important as a leader, what do you say no to so that you can say yes to something else? That's what we're just going to look at in the next 20 minutes before we finish. So here's a question. Again, I'm going to put you back into groups. The question's going to come up. You have to choose to be effective and not just efficient. You've got 2 minutes in your groups to define efficiency is blank, effectiveness is blank. Okay, so Luke's going to put into the groups just for 2 minutes just now. Great, welcome back. Anyone want to give us a definition of efficiency or effectiveness, or what the difference is? Again, these are words that we know. Actually, writing a dictionary definition is much harder.
It's not really a definition, but we sort of said that effectiveness is more about what you're doing, and that efficiency is about how you're doing it.
Excellent. Excellent. That's very good. Let's have the next screen. The way that I put it was that efficiency is about doing things right, and effectiveness is doing the right things. So yeah, you're right. Efficiency is about how you do it, but effectiveness is what you're doing. So, I can read this book. I can learn to read this book really, really quickly. So it only takes me 2 hours to read it rather than 4 hours. So I can be much more efficient at reading this book. But the question is, should I be reading this book in the first place? Maybe I should be reading this other book. Effectiveness is about doing the right stuff, the thing that really matters most, rather than doing something better, faster, or quick or cheaper. And going back to the 24 hours are enough, you've only got 24 hours, so you can squeeze more stuff in. But the bigger question is actually, you doing the right stuff? And so effective leaders in management or anything else, the issue is not how fast they are or how good they are at doing something. It's that they do the right stuff. They do the things that matter most. And that's really the key. And I think COVID has made this even more of an issue for us, because the whole thing about COVID and lockdown is that everything takes longer. It's more frustrating. I can't be efficient at anything. It's really frustrating. But actually what matters more is, am I doing the things that matter? And this is the key thing for a leader, is to think, not can my CU do this event faster or do more events? It's, should we be doing this particular thing at all? And the question for you is, what is most effective? In other words, what will most contribute towards my vision of having every student in Queen's have opportunity to hear and respond to the gospel. Effectiveness is what matters, and that's the one thing to focus on. It's not just, I'm not saying we have to do things half-baked. It's not just trying to squeeze more in and do more things faster. It is, what is the one thing that we must do? And therefore, the second point is you have to plan. And especially in COVID, I think you have to plan more. And I think this is a little bit strange, is that the problem with COVID and lockdown is that we know that plans change. We know that circumstances change. And so it's really frustrating. But I think it's even more important, therefore, at the moment, to plan more. I know that seems a bit counterintuitive, but the danger for many leaders, for many CU leaders, for staff workers and everything else is that they don't plan, they don't spend time planning. And the leader's job is always to be looking up and forward, saying, where are we going? What's happening in a month's time? Not just what is on my to-do list today, but it's always trying to help others look forwards. And so your job with your committee is not just to plan this week's meeting. You should be thinking about the carol service. You should be thinking about choosing new leaders in February. You should be thinking about the mission in February or whatever we're going to be doing, or about next summer. In other words, your job is always to be looking at and having a longer time scale. And therefore, you need to be planning kind of 1 week, 1 month, 1 semester, 1 year, different time horizons. I mean, you come up with your own time horizons, but basically like that. It's the danger is that most of us plan one day. We have a to-do list for today. And so this quote that people always overestimate what they can do in 1 day or 1 year, they always underestimate what they could achieve in 5 years. And the issue is always a lack of vision, a lack of forward planning, and too much crammed in today. Because and we said this last time, you never get your to-do list done. But the issue is actually that I've got a year on committee. I've only got about 4 or 5 more months until handover, maybe not even that long. The question is, what is the 1 or 2 things that are most effective, rather than I've just done 1,000 things today? And to do that, you need to plan and plan and plan. And then point 3 that's going to come up, you have to decide what is best next. And so the first of these bullet points, I've said it before, where are we going? What's our vision? And the second bullet point then is, what is our situation? So hopefully those two will come up. Luke has not got the fastest computer today. But again, what is the best thing to do next? There's a third bullet point going to come up in a second, by the way. But what I'm trying to say is, where are we headed for, and where are we today? Because again, another quote from someone else, I can't remember where it's from, is that the leader's key role is to define reality, is to say, this is what my CU looks like today. This is what we're heading for. But for the leader to say, look, guys, this is what we like today. Because it's very easy for a group to sit around and think, yeah, we're wonderful. We're the best. We are God's gift to CUs. We are the best ever. But actually the leader says, yeah, you're nice and friendly, but actually you're not very good at this. I mean, you say that nicely so as not to crush their spirits. But you're trying to say, this is the reality of where we're at. This is where we're heading for. This is the reality. And therefore, we're going to pick the few things that are going to take me from A to B. Does that make sense so far? So one tool that I recommend you use, it's not a Christian tool. It's used by businesses. It's a simple thing, and it's called SWOT. Who has done or who knows about a SWOT analysis? Strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. A few? Yeah, a few not. It is, those of you who've seen it before, it is a very, very simple, blunt instrument, isn't it? What it does is, this is it. That's the page. That's all it is. You take strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Strengths and weaknesses are internal, and opportunities and threats are external. I'll give you an example in a second. And all you're looking for is a few bullet points. You can do it in 10 minutes in Starbucks on the back of a napkin. You can do it with your committee, or you can have your staff worker do it with you. And all it is a snapshot in time. And then at the bottom there, in the next animation, you'll see that what's really helpful then is to pick the 3 things this year. What will make the most difference? I can't do everything, but what will make the most difference to help us as a committee fulfill our vision? Okay, so the next slide will give you an example. I filled in some examples on this mythical CU, some strengths and weaknesses. So for example, strengths are the CU welcomes outside as well. We've got more small groups and more small group than we've ever had before. The CU is happy to try new things. Those are some strengths that are internal to the CU. Some of the weaknesses are CU members don't get the vision. We don't know why we're about. The small groups aren't evangelistic. There's no prayerful expectation that God will ever bring anyone to Christ. Just an example of what a CU is like. That's internal. Then external, you would say, well, the university authorities have opened a new halls of residence. The Philosophy Society want to debate. They want to debate Dawkins. Threats, external threats. COVID has threatened all sorts of things. There's a cult trying to start up in Dublin. Okay, so do you see what that is? Strengths, weaknesses. So bring up the next thing. So we want to pick 3 of these. What will make the biggest difference? And so I've just picked one example here, is that you could say, well, actually, look, small groups. The small groups are a wonderful opportunity because we've got more of them and more leaders to train, but they're not evangelistic. So let's make small groups one of our main priorities for the course of this year. Because if we can have small groups that are firing in evangelism and small group leaders who are trained and get the vision, then all of a sudden we've got evangelism happening all through the CU, and we've got a group of CU leaders who could go onto committee next year because they've got the vision. But the small groups, therefore, is crucial in this particular CU. And then press the button once more. I picked another one in a green highlighter. Is, well, actually, we've got a really friendly CU, but because of COVID, it's really, really hard to reach anyone who doesn't have a friend in the CU. So could we do something about that? So what you could say is that in the course of the next 4 or 5 months, during the time that I'm a leader, here are my 2 priorities. I'm going to do these 2 things well. I'm not going to do everything. I'm not going to be able to reach the new halls of residence. I'm not going to be able to do X, Y, and Z, but I'm going to develop small groups that are evangelistic and that have leaders that get the vision. And I'm going to make sure that every CU member is, I don't know how, you work it out how, but every CU member is actually doing something with someone they don't know. And so that becomes, these are the 2 things that I think before God will most help my CU reach its vision in the year ahead. Does that make sense? And that's what a SWOT analysis is, just a snapshot. It's just that 4-quadrant thing. And as I say, it's not difficult to explain. It's quite easy for a group, for a committee to do that together, even across Zoom, or for you and a couple of others to do it with your staff work or whatever else. It gives you a snapshot in time. So finally, going to the final slide then, Luke, if you would, back to the bottom of this analysis. How do you decide what is the best thing to do next? Not what is a good thing, but what is the best thing? Is you have to say, where am I going? What are we like today? And therefore, what will we do? What 1 or 2 or 3 things will we do? There's always more you can do, but what are the few things that will make the biggest difference? In other words, what are the effective things, not just the efficient ones? And I said this last time, in that strategy, a definition of strategy is making hard choices between good options. I said this last time, you have a good option and a bad option. That's not strategy, that's common sense. You don't choose the bad option, you choose the good option. But strategy is saying, look, there's lots of good things we could do. This is the one thing we are going to concentrate on. I may not forget that entirely, but I'm going to put the weight of my time, effort, thoughts, emotions, prayers on this one thing. So small group leaders, small groups being evangelistic, that's the main thing we're going to push for. If the Philosophy Society wants to do debate, we will do the debate, but it won't take quite as much airtime or brain time as this one thing, as an example. That's just my example. And the thing is that if you chase 2 rabbits, both will escape. I'm sure that's a proverb from someone. I don't think I've made anything up like that. But that you can't do everything well. You have to be able to say no to something in order to be able to say yes to something else. And that's, apart from a summary slide, that's basically what I wanted to say today. So any thoughts on that or comments? Yeah, just go back again 1 sec before we get to that one, and then we will pray. But any thoughts or comments on that last point about how to get from A to B? Where I am today with my SWOT analysis, my vision for the future, and how to choose a couple of things. Any thoughts on that? I would say the great thing about this, the great thing about people who write management books, which I think I said I enjoy, is that it's all great in theory, right? Working out in practice is another thing. I get that. There's a famous saying that no plan, talking about armies and war strategies, that no strategy or no plan survives the firing of the first bullet. You have a plan. As soon as war happens, everything goes out the window. Nevertheless, if you don't plan, if you don't have some idea of where you're heading, it's quite hard at the end of the year to look back and say, what did we achieve? It's better to choose a few things and to do a few things well than to try to do everything generally. let's go to the final slide, and then we'll break off into groups to pray for each other. This is just a summary of what we looked at, that who you are matters more than anything else. Who you are before the Lord and your security in him matters more than anything else. But the Lord has kindly given us a job to do. And what leaders do is communicate the vision a lot in lots of different ways, so it's not boring. Build a team who will take you there. And they will outlast you. In other words, the ethos that you build will carry over to the team the year after you and the year after you that. And then do a few things well, rather than everything half-baked. So I hope that's helpful. Brilliant. Why don't we, Luke, do you want to put us into breakout rooms, and we'll pray for each other just for a couple of minutes. And then we'll call you back just at the end. Okay. I was going to say at the beginning of the call, I was saying that if you want copies of those PowerPoints for the last three sessions, if you want to open the chat function, you can type in to me, send a message to me personally with your email address. If you want to send your email address to everybody by chatting to everybody, that's absolutely fine. But a couple of you sent me your email address specifically, and I'll just send you all the PowerPoints. So if you want those, open the chat window, send me your email address, and I'll send them on to you shortly. The other thing to say is that, of course, tomorrow is CUI's day of prayer, so 12 hours from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. There's information on Instagram, Facebook, I think our website as well, just on the hour, every hour, there's different stuff. You probably know about that. It'd be lovely to see you on that. I'll maybe ask Luke if you'd be happy to close in prayer for us all and to pray for these guys. Would that be right? Thanks, Luke.
Father, we come to you asking for your help, because we know that we as humans just mess up all the time. God, help us to revel in who you are. Help us to marvel at the wonder that is a God who created everything, a God who created all of the universe itself, and yet became a man to walk among us. God, blow our minds today and blow our minds every day as we look to all that Jesus has done. God, help us to look to him as a leader to follow. Help us emulate the way that he led. Help us to follow his example in love and compassion, but also in gathering a team together and focusing on certain tasks. God, just help us to really cling to what he has done. And we lift up all of the presidents and vice presidents across the island, and those that are in the call right now and those that aren't. Help them to lead in a way that is wise and a way that is humble, in a way that is honoring of you, God. Help us to be blessed by your provision every day and throughout the CU year and beyond that as well. Help us just constantly to look to you for everything. God, we just lift everything up to you, knowing that you're working and knowing that you will answer our prayers and that you will be working, that your kingdom will come and that you will be glorified throughout it all. God, bless us and go before us now for the rest of the year in your name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Well, thank you, Luke, and thank you all very much for coming along. I realise you had other things you could have been doing, but I appreciate the time you've taken. So thank you for your participation. And I hope you have a